Welcome everyone to today's film talk about ethical fashion. I think it's an important topic. It's been on the landscape for a while and more important than ever. My name is Lori DePreet Brown and I am the director of the 4W initiative. Those 4Ws stand for Women and Wellbeing in Wisconsin and the World. And I am based in the School of Human Ecology, and the School of Human Ecology has a focus related to fashion, and there's a lot of faculty in that department who try to work with these awarenesses. I'll note the Global Artisans Initiative. There's also a student org called the Artisans Collective that work with these values and principles. Today's sponsor for this event is the Institute for Regional and International Studies National Resource Center. The IRIS-NRC, as we call it, supports and enhances global awareness and inspires informed thinking about the complexities of our world. They provide resources and expertise to K-12 and post-secondary educators, students, and the community at large. We are really grateful to CALS Global, UW-Madison, proud to be participating as the 4W initiative. Those are all our co-sponsors today. And please check out the websites of these organizations and social media. 4W, which I represent, leverages the strengths of UW-Madison to be a convener and leading voice in education, applied research, and impactful engagement to promote gender equity, global well-being, and the full participation of women in society. This is a great fit, just like sometimes the dress is a great fit. CALS, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, their global mission is facilitating, expanding, and supporting opportunities for UW-CALS to engage with the world and for the world to engage with UW-CALS. Carmen Pitts and Essie Lencher will be running our tech support today. If you have any challenges, please use the chat function to contact them and you'll hear from them right away. We will be recording today's event and sharing the link and digital resources in a post-event email. You'll only show up on the recording if your microphone is turned on to speak. Please enter any question in the chat for the Q&A portion during the last 15 minutes of the event. We look forward to a really active chat and discussion. With that, I'll get to the substance of our program, and we do like to begin with a UW-Madison land acknowledgement. The University of Madison, Wisconsin occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Tijope since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. When we think about textiles as well, we have incredible textile traditions, and so this this fashion aspect also, I think, has there's part of an acknowledgement there as well in terms of our indigenous heritages. I'd now like to turn to the most exciting part of my job, which is to introduce our wonderful speaker, Nikki Anderson. Inspired by the quote, "You must be the change you wish to see in the world," Nikki Anderson founded her retail store, Change Fair Trade Fashion Boutique in Madison, Wisconsin. I know many of us know it and have shopped there. Since opening in 2012, Change Boutique has become a valuable resource to both the local community and to the artisans in developing countries that produce the clothing, jewelry, and accessories that they sell. By providing an alternative to purchasing sweatshop-produced garments, Change has made ethical fashion more accessible in Madison. We're really looking forward to hearing from Nikki, and I'm just going to turn it to you, Nikki. Thank you so much for being with us. And you're muted. Please unmute yourself as I mute.
There we go. Am I unmuted? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is a really awesome opportunity for me on a couple levels. One, it reminds me how passionate I am about what I do. I had mentioned to the hosts beforehand that this fuses my two biggest like fear sources, which are public speaking and technology, into one. But because this is so important to me, I am confronting both of those fears and embracing this opportunity. And in doing the research to prepare for this, I was, and watching the movie again, of course, reminded of my own journey and observing this industry for the last 10 years. So what I'm going to do is kind of go over my bird's eye view. As you probably felt after watching the movie, this is a huge, broad issue, and it touches on so many different themes. And I can't necessarily do justice to any of those, but what I'm going to do is kind of give a synopsis of where things are now and what's happened in between when this film was produced and present day. And then also focus. So a lot of that is defining what is the problem and identifying how bad things are. But then I want to end with proposing a lot of ideas about how we can be the change. So with that, I will start. Ideally, there we go. So this image probably looks familiar to you from the movie. And as we know, this is an image taken after the Rana Plaza factory collapse. And it was just beyond devastating, as I'm sure you saw in the film. But what it did was it exposed all of these awful, horrific things that had been going on. My store opened in 2012 because we were all, many of us were aware that these atrocities were happening prior to this, but what this did was shine a light and make put it on the radar for the entire world to expose what's going on. And especially given the fact that this could have been prevented, that workers had communicated that these faults in the structure existed and that they were made to go back to work despite that. It just really exposed so many different layers of wrongdoing, and you can't unsee a tragedy like this. So as tragic as it is, it did provide the catalyst for some change. So that has been a positive development. Out of one of those being the formation of Fashion Revolution, which a lot of the resources that I'm going to share are derived from this organization. And in addition, obviously this film was made. Had this factory collapse not happened, I don't think they would have had the prompting to really expose all of this. So 2015, the film was made and Fashion Revolution was born. And Fashion Revolution is just an awesome resource. They're looking comprehensively at defining what the problems are industry-wide, and then defining for each type of person, whether you're a journalist, a student, an educator, a store owner, everyone's got a piece of the puzzle here, and we can all be part of the solution. So what it does is it outlines and makes very accessible ways that we can get involved and demand accountability from the garment industry. And they will highlight that this is a super tall order to ask for and demand transparency in the industry, because it is a really, really complicated supply chain. So it's not an ethical garment unless every step of that process is done ethically. So it's important that brands disclose from farm to factory to shop what their practices are, because there's a lot of wiggle room in there where they can sort of insidiously hide practices and turn the other cheek, so to speak, and not turn a blind eye, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, to the exploitations that are going on. So Fashion Revolution, one of the first undertakings they had, and at that time, they just surveyed 219 fashion brands that comprise the majority of the fast fashion industry, and just getting sort of a benchmark of where are we at, how bad is this? And the statistics they found were staggeringly pathetic, that, as this is just one of the many statistics about the wages that workers are paid. And totally unacceptable. And it's just sort of setting a landmark of, okay, this is where we're at, and then using this as a tool to measure where we can see gains from year to year. So essentially what they exposed was what we suspected, that the vast majority of people that are working in the garment industry in developing countries are essentially modern day slaves. And they're completely reliant on the fact that we as consumers are not questioning where our garments are coming from. Because if we were to ask the question, the answers would be disturbing. So what is the Fashion Revolution's suggestion is to apply pressure and ask the makers of our clothes, who made my clothes? And so they've come up with tons of really creative campaigns, a lot of them reliant on social media. But again, they really have a full court press approach to demanding transparency. And with transparency, you know, it unravels this complicated mess. So they've done a great job, and through this vehicle, they have seen some good change, or they had in between 2015 and 2019. This was working and progress was being made. I'll go to this slide where this is featuring a response to that question, and the fair trade brands excel at this because they are proud of and are building up, as you saw in the film, their artisans are something that they revere. They're not trying to hide how they treat them. They're proud of their work and of being a part of their lives and their communities. So anyway, stark contrast to having to hold somebody to the flame to ask who made something, to the fair trade alternative, which is being very forthcoming and proud of what that answer is. So this tool that Fashion Revolution created to gauge and really, you know, hard data that you can compare from year to year. This tool is known as the Fashion Transparency Index. The 2021 edition is out. And this right here is wikirate.org. This organization takes that data and makes it into a more accessible tool, so you can filter by company and sort of get what I would call an ethical report card, and find out how one brand, you know, compares. Of the 250 brands, how are they doing A, B, C letter grade type thing compared to another. So it's a really helpful way to interpret all that data. And what this 2021 edition of this report revealed is that all of those gains that had been made from 2015 to 2019 were lost because of COVID. So it's eye-opening and discouraging, but it's important to know. This report kind of explains the complexity of what happened. And so COVID, as we all know, created lockdowns. So retail stores were closed, and the way their contracts work is that they don't pay their suppliers until after their garments are received. And so they just canceled their orders. So these people, many of the clothes had already been produced, and brands just canceled and just didn't pay it. So the people that had made these never got paid for the work they did. And then as lockdowns continued, these people lost their job. So they were already living in poverty, and their living conditions just got that much more unthinkably awful as a result of COVID. So the slides, I didn't allude to that. Okay, sorry. So the full report is available. We have a digital resource library that accompanies this presentation. And as I said, like, this is such a weighty topic, and there's so much data that I can't really do it justice. So I'm just giving you my synopsis of what the takeaways are, but I encourage you to read through the report and really get a better understanding of how bad things are. And what they found was that, make sure, they are essentially greenwashing. So these companies, rather than making real meaningful change, they are paying lip service to the concept, and they are scoring better and higher on commitments to policies that would protect workers, protect the environment. And so they're, on paper saying, yes, we as a company really believe in this. And then in practice, there's no follow through. So really discouraging, and really highlights the need for regulatory mandates on transparency, because without that, no one's going to be volunteering this information. And without the threat of sanctions or reparations being required of them, it's just not going to happen. So again, Fashion Revolution is helping with campaigns so that you can write letters to your politicians, and they've got templates and things that you can easily access. Their letter writing campaigns to, if there's a brand you like that you want to be able to communicate with them, they create these channels so you can have a voice and speak your mind on these issues. Another finding they had was that in addition to the greenwashing, and they are also showing they'll do on the first tier of production, which is like the cutting and sewing stage. There have been some improvements, but then when it comes to the wet processing, where they're actually making the fabric, there's like zero accountability. So clearly there's a lot of things that they don't want people to see in that stage of the processing. So they just aren't saying. And then to distract you, these brands will talk a lot about their pilot projects and expect you to just look at what they're, either pledging to do in the future or what this little pilot project is. But in their main practices, there's no real substantive change. Another awesome resource that Fashion Revolution provides are the garment worker diaries. So this is a dialogue that they have, excuse me, with garment workers. There's around 1,200 garment workers that they communicate with on a regular basis by phone because of COVID, not in person. And this way, because there is so much fear of speaking out, this is a safe place where they can directly communicate what, in fact, life in these factories is like. And it's devastating. The outcome, if you read the garment worker diaries, it just breaks your heart. The things that you would assume just as out of human decency would be, the way things happen is not the case. For example, the Bangladesh, the entire country is on lockdown because of COVID, yet these factories are open. There's no social distancing. They don't provide them PPE. And there's, I think they're up to a maybe 9% vaccination rate. So yeah, it's just unthinkable. And the risk that they're putting people in knowingly just for their ability to make a profit is just unconscionable, in my opinion. And to me, and to everyone involved, I think the solution is unionizing and giving them a voice and some leverage so they can say, we aren't going to take this, we will go on strike unless these conditions are met. So you would think that could have some efficacy, but sadly, there is no ability for them to unionize. Hold on, next slide. They were quoted as saying that 84% of the brands require that their suppliers will allow workers to unionize, yet only 10% of them actually follow through and ask that question of, do you employ, do you have unions in your facilities? So again, it's this smoke and mirrors, like brands claiming that it's important to them that workers have a voice, but then not enforcing that. And in this report, this is again one that is available in the digital resource folder. Again, just staggering, make your heart sick findings about what's happening now. This report, produced by the Business and Human Rights Center, highlights, and they focus on 9 case studies specifically, but they're highlighting the prevalence of COVID being used as an opportunity to discriminate against labor activists. So again, any gains that were made by having some degree of representation to advocate for workers' rights, now they're since there's so many layoffs because of COVID, they're targeting union members specifically. And one of the case studies they disclose is that a factory where their only unionized factory, this company owns 20 factories, and they had to make cutbacks. So they closed down the one out of the 20 that had union representation in it. And they're in the appeals process that, the UN and other groups are, trying to help create some sort of recourse. So, but it's not easy. All these, again, you can refer to the reports, but most of them remain unresolved, that they just have no recourse. And because things are so desperate in these developing countries right now, they're completely desperate for any work. So they have no ability to advocate for anything other than what, they're offered. So clearly what this tells me is there's a lot of work to do. And why I get excited about this opportunity is hopefully you as educators or students have a lot of access to voices and energy that can create some mobilization and real action. So I'm going to shift the remainder of my presentation from doom and gloom to what we can do in solutions. So again, Fashion Revolution, they have a specific page on their website dedicated to resources for educators. So they make it so easy. There are like curriculum templates that you can access, just countless tools. And I know students, this generation is so savvy with social media and using it as a tool to change and apply pressure. There's just so much opportunity there. So I get excited about the potential. So I see this as an opportunity again to further that cause. Oh, another thing they offer on Fashion Revolution's website, there's a free online course you can take. So I'm interested in taking that myself, but I highly encourage you to go there and check that out. And I've talked mostly about the awful impact that the fast fashion industry has had on people, but I don't at all mean to minimize the damaging effects it's had on the environment. So part of the solutions need to be around reworking the entire industry's relationship with environmental practices. So I would highly recommend this resource. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation is doing some awesome work on creating solutions and sort of templates for how to re-envision the fashion industry. And they refer to it as a circular economy, which I think is brilliant. And yeah, again, if you visit their website, they've got like blueprints out there essentially of how this can work. One of the examples they provide is this jeans redesign initiative. And this is a collaborative effort between, I can't remember how many brands, up to 94 brands participating, but they're all working together. Apparently denim production is one of the worst, most toxic of all the fashion producing or garment industry sectors. So there's a lot of room for improvement here. So they're collaborating on how to make jeans in a more eco-friendly way, and then offering this blueprint, and then hopefully enforcing an industry standard where this is just the new normal, and that there can be regulatory oversight and requirements that this be adhered to. So again, I'm very excited that these types of things are happening and that they're getting buy-in from these big brands. And I think they've already produced 500,000 pairs of jeans that are in compliance with this model and are actually in the market now. So again, exciting. Another element of the circular economy for fashion is reusing and recycling fashion. So I know that's sort of trending now, thankfully. The movie highlights the damaging effects that our viewing fashion and clothing as just disposable has had on the environment and on the economies in developing countries. So a big part of this is not giving things to a thrift store and assuming, or a a Vinnie's or whatever kind of thing, and assuming that it's going to just get purchased again. Like, we need to be more mindful and strategic about how we're going to recirculate garments. And so this is an example that they highlight. This is an app you can get, the Vestaire Collective. And they are huge, and they worldwide connect you with the ability you can buy and sell clothing, so that you're not buying new, but new to you kind of clothing. So anyway, great resource. And I know there are a lot of other things by way of clothing swaps. So if you go, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has a lot of ideas and links for other ways you can do clothing swaps or rent clothing rather than buying. So lots of neat opportunities there. Next, I wanted to touch on, when looking at sort of what's happening by way of progress on enforcing better environmental protocol in the industry. I looked to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I actually spoke to a class maybe 3 years ago, and the teacher in that class was adapted all of her curriculum to be based on these 17 development goals. And I thought that was genius. So I went, and again, I included in the resource folder that accompanies the presentation, this document, and it is genius. I mean, it is completely like a ready-made plug it in tool for how you can develop age-appropriate curriculum, so that kids can understand the complexity of these global issues, not just fashion, but how all of the climate crisis, is, we all have a role in creating the problem and then also in fixing it. So I get very excited that this makes it a little easier to have a tangible ask, and how to put into action and not just espouse good values, but to actually put into practice. And it's very empowering for kids to see that they can make a pledge and commit, and it's added into the data. Their contribution is then folded into, when we're trying to quantify reduction in carbon emissions, they fold in these kind of pledges so that you're really a part of the solution. So again, very empowering and tons of good information. So again, I hope you take a chance to look through that resource. Then another resource, and what I got super excited about, as much as I get discouraged that things are trending in such a hard direction due to COVID, I get encouraged by the fact that this app and website exists now. So in doing this research, this wasn't here the last time I prepared for a presentation. So this app, I'm going to pause on this slide and ask you, if you have your phone, download this app right now. It's called Done Good. And in my opinion, this whole film workshop presentation will be worthwhile if everyone in attendance has this app on their phone. As a result of my presentation, my heart will be happy knowing that I made a difference, because this is such a simple and awesome step to take. So what they are, this group was founded, where's his name? Oh, there it is, Cullen Schwartz. And he was in DC during the Obama administration and was just sickened by the role of money in politics and corporate spending in particular, and decided we need to have a way that we can use our spending capital as a way to cast a vote for our values. So he created this infrastructure, and they vet all of the brands that they sell. And it makes it easy. They call themselves an ethical Amazon, basically. So the same way you would use Amazon for fill in the blank random need, check this out instead, and go to Done Good and filter for whatever it is you're looking for. They also have filters, like if you have other values that are important to you for your spending to reflect, you can filter by a minority owned business or a business that uses just recycled material or made in the USA. So whatever your values are, they make it easy to support businesses that are in accordance with your values. So I can't say enough good things. I'm already totally on board with this myself. So again, good has come from this experience already. Then I wanted to, another thing that you can do is and what I've done personally is I made a commitment once, it's been 10 years, that I personally only shop fair trade or secondhand. And so by shopping fair trade, there's none of this guesswork of where did it come from, because all of these brands are on a voluntary basis complying with all of the priorities that are outlined here, these 10 action items there. So again, if you're on the fence of like, wow, I'm scared, am I part of the problem? If you buy fair trade, in good conscience, you're part of the solution and not part of the problem. But I get that sometimes that's not an option, especially, if it's something that's a product type that, isn't a fair trade certified. There's no such thing, but there are options. Okay. Transparency. Okay. Oh, I know. Sorry. So this Fair Fashion Week, the image I have here. So another sign of progress to me is that when I started, it was very hard to identify brands. I mean, it was like a needle in a haystack. If you went to the merchandise mart in Chicago and we're going to try to find stuff to stock your store, 99.9% of the things they're selling there were sweatshop produced. So it was really hard to identify fair trade brand. There just weren't that many out there. So a huge sign of progress to me is that there is such a resource now that's called FAIR, which is spelled there. So this is one of their Fair Fashion Week. They're actually like a wholesale hub, and they're the equivalent of what that app Done Good does for retail customers. They're like that for me as a wholesale customer for my store. So that shows a huge amount of progress that such a thing exists, and that there are enough of us retailers out there that they have an audience for this. So again, 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing. And it's awesome. Like every week they're adding more. So clearly something's working in terms of people are getting the message that the market is demanding better. And this, to me, like, I think it's very easy. This highlights the example of, oh, it's a dress. I just want a cute dress. And these look on face value like interchangeable, like, oh, which one's cuter or which one's cheaper. But if you are an informed consumer, you ask those questions of, okay, where was it made? What is it made of? And then you'll see very quickly that these aren't comparable dresses by any means. There's one that's by far superior, and it happens to be the one on my left, which I happen to carry at my store. So again, being an informed consumer, if there's one takeaway, it's just to ask those questions. Where was this made? So in closing, I'm going to give a plug for my store, own stores like mine. Coming to a store like mine, everything's already curated. Like everything I carry, you can buy in with a clear conscience and know that it was ethically sourced. I wanted to give, and I do have this outfit also that's pictured there. And then I wanted to give a shout out to this brand Known Supply. So what they do in addition, so you can see there that each garment is signed by the artisan that made it. So in stark contrast to what fast fashion is doing of creating complete smoke and mirrors and disassociation with artisans, this brand and many others that I carry are proudly putting a name and a face with a product. And then what I thought is super cool is if you go, there's a barcode that you can scan, or you can go to their website, and then they create the opportunity for you to actually engage with the artisan. You can send a thank you letter. You can send a picture of yourself wearing the garment. And it's a real meaningful dialogue and a way to show respect for, I appreciate the work you're doing and we're all in this together. And it closes that loop of, there's a human behind this and then there's a human at the other end. So I thought it was good to end on a positive note. I have no idea how I'm doing on time. But those were
you're doing fine on time, and it's a good time to maybe make a if you want to make a summary comment and have questions, but you have plenty of time if you have more topics you'd like to cover. I'm sure people will have a lot of discussion.
Well, I'd like to get some feedback of what people are most interested in, because I feel like there's a lot of different ways you can go, and I'm interested.
So why don't we ask people to comment in the chat questions or comments they have? Maybe you can answer the question, where's the clothing that you're wearing right now from? Let's fill up the chat and see who even knows.
I know.
And maybe I'll start off, I'll kick off with a question. When you've talked about accessing these alternatives, what can we do on the marketing side, or the style side, to promote this as a lifestyle? I think a lot of young people are seeing, new merchandise and certain kinds of things, and don't really realize how appealing these other fair trade or secondhand options can be. So what's happening on the marketing side of all this?
I think, again, I would say Fashion Revolution they have an entire marketing campaign with, the images already ready for you to just cut and paste and use on your social media, to not just ask for transparency, but to highlight what you're doing that's furthering the, what I mean? It's not just a who made my clothes, but they're actually, they have all kinds of content to kind of achieve what you're talking about, so that you don't have to make the content yourself. They have like a very deep resource library, which I think there are degrees to which people are interested in engaging in this dialogue. So what I liked is that some people, they just want the soundbite and they want an image, and that's okay. But other people want, data. And so they have both. They really are all things to all people, whatever you're looking for to help make the case marketing wise in your life.
Thank you so much. While we're waiting for folks, and I'm going to invite you to take down your PowerPoint so people can see your smiling face, and maybe I'm going to invite folks to fill the chat with some comments, and maybe ask you, when you think of the partners that you represent at Change Boutique, can you tell us about one of your partnerships, or something, some of the buyers that you work with, and what it means to you and what it's meant for them to have?
Did I go away when? Okay, hold on. Did it? I don't know what I did there. Okay, hold on.
We can see you now. So you
can. Okay,
yeah, great.
That's funny because I can't see anybody else, but.
If you go up to the top right hand.
Here we go. Okay, got it.
Okay,
got it.
So if you want to tell us maybe about one of your client relationships and what it means to be in the Change Boutique model.
Yeah, absolutely. What comes to mind immediately is, so I don't know if people in the audience are from Madison, or where people are coming from, but so my store was oddly hit by a car. So I'm located on Williamson Street, and I had this freak thing happen. So we actually had to relocate. But at that, all the insurance agents and everybody was like, just get, money. Like you'll say a car hit my store and I'm closed, and you can just get insurance reimbursement. And I was like, no, because that would mean I would be doing what these other fast fashion brands have done, of canceling orders due to external circumstances that are completely out of the artisan's control. And they so desperately need the work. So I was like, no, I'm going to stay open. I'll figure it out. And so started thinking that caused me to think about how important the relationships I have with my brands are. And then I was reminded of one in particular that was super poignant. So this summer, I had a visit from one of the brands. They're primarily jewelry, but some apparel too. But the brand's founder had just been in Peru March like 13th before lockdown. And she was doing her normal, consulting with them and talking about, because they need to give input of like what's going to sell better. Like the artisans are very skilled, and I think there's a balance between preserving the traditional design elements that these artisans bring to the table, but then also adding in that Western thing that's going to make it a little more saleable. So she was down there doing that, and while down there, she was targeted. She was violently attacked and beaten and severely injured, and all of her identification stolen. And she said that she found out it was a planned attack because they employ a small group of artisans they're all women and they're disabled. And she said there's an 80% unemployment rate in the community where they are based in Peru. And there's so much resentment from the men in the community that these women have jobs because they don't think they're worthy, that they should have the jobs. So as a retribution act, and they also assumed she must be rich, which she is not. But she was brutally attacked, and then had no ID, and the country went on lockdown. So she was stuck in Peru, recovering from this. But I saw her, what was it, like 9 months afterward, and I was just like, you must, like, doesn't that scare you? And she was like, nope. Yes, she's like, there's a lot of therapy going on, but it highlights for me, this is just crucial, that this is how they're every day, the kind of violence, their living conditions are this bad that this kind of thing can happen. And so she just was like, I'm grateful that I have a house to go home to and security. And she was just like, no, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if anything,
Thank
it just
you so much. That's such a story of courage, and just with someone doing their business, making a difference. And how disappointing that people have those gender and biases against ableism as well. We have a couple of questions in the chat now, so I'm gonna start going to those. Lily Trikla asks, are there any mainstream brands that are fair trade? What are we looking for when we're buying only fair trade?
Yes, there are. One thing to look for, there is a certification now. So like it can be that easy where it's overtly printed, fair trade certified. And then there are brands, and I encourage you to, like if you go to Done Good, like an app like that, they will vet these brands. So you're not having to do that. But there are some brands, I'm trying to think, Patagonia. Okay. But the nice thing about, if you pull up this WikiRate org, like you can look at brands like, Zara, H&M, and it's all public knowledge, but you can see what their scores were. And so it is
repeat
helpful.
The name of that, and I'll type it in the chat for folks.
Wikirate.org.
It's called wikirate.org. Okay.
Yeah, and the link is in the slides as well. And what that is it's just like a way to manipulate the data. So you can search by brand, and then the report that Fashion Revolution created, you can boil it down to see what brand is doing what. And in my opinion, like the lesser of two evils. Like if you're like, I'm going to the mall, I'm either going to H&M or I'm going to Zara, I'd say go to H&M after reading that report. So that.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're going to go to the next question now, and I hope why don't folks who are still on maybe note in the chat if you've already signed up for Done Good or not, so that Nikki can know how many of us have done it. And I've done it as well. Meanwhile, I'm going to go to William Antonio Gutierrez's question here. He says, what material of clothing do you most recommend? Cotton, polyester, jeans? Do you have any recommendations where you think you're a little better off?
That's a great question. And when I started, I would say like 99% of what was available that was fair trade was organic cotton, but and that is great. But I think a lot of people would argue it's not sustainable because it requires a lot of land use to produce cotton. And especially organic cotton. So I think it's important to diversify. So that's been a priority of mine. So I carry, like, I'm wearing hemp on top, and see my leg, recycled plastic bottles on the bottom. So yes, I carry a nice balance of recycled fiber materials. Alpaca is another sustainable thing. So we have that. But yeah, all natural fibers or recycled. No, like chemically, no polyester.
Well, okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And that's exciting. Can you say a little bit more about the hemp that you're wearing and where you got it? And if you know anything, I know that there's some history of Wisconsin and hemp. I don't know how much you know about that, but I'd love to just hear more about the hemp while we watch for more questions.
Yeah.
We've got about 12 people so far who've signed up. So that's kind of
Oh,
exciting.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, I actually had heard a customer who's become a friend stopped in, and she's part of it's a pretty big project, but it was, and she's in compliance with the UN Sustainability Development Goals, but she's doing small scale hemp farming. She's actually working with some Amish farmers, and so she's doing a lot of work in Pennsylvania, but then also in like Western Wisconsin, and they are creating resources so that farmers can, I guess Wisconsin does have good land soil conditions for growing hemp. And there are resources being allocated toward helping farmers access that, and then a way to bring that to market. So they're not just helping them grow it, but then also helping them to access market for that. So I think there is a lot of, again, since starting the business, I see a lot of positive momentum in diversifying of fiber, so there's not such a heavy reliance on cotton.
Great. Okay, I have another question while we watch for some more from the audience. I'm thinking about all the different relationships women at different points in their lives have to, clothes buying and so forth. What do you see across generations? What's happening with teens, college students, moms, retired folks? I mean, who shops for this, and how can we get all these different generations participating in the movement?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the biggest thing that's noticeable is like the younger generation is way more interested in online shopping, it seems like, and then older, but that's not necessarily bad or good. It just is. It's harder for me because I'm not tech savvy. And so my ability to sell online is virtually nothing. But so I do depend a lot on a more mature audience that values that feeling a garment and then hearing the story of who made it, where it's from. And also they may have more time on their hands. I know younger, that for a lot of reasons. But that's what I love about tools like Done Good, is that just because you are really inclined to shop online versus in store doesn't mean that you have to be buying sweatshop produced things. There's ways to shop ethically online. I can't remember if I answered that completely.
Yeah, you did. So a follow-up question. I know young women and people of all ages, but hearing a lot of young women also shopping with their feet around the issue of, body acceptance and different body types. How well is the fair trade movement accommodating different sizes and different ways?
Yes, that's a great, again, lots of progress being made since starting. There are, I'd say, half of the brands that I work with that are adding in double XL, triple XL to be more inclusive. So there, I can see improvement in that way. I would give a shout out to Lev Apparel, which is actually a Madison-based woman-owned business, and her background is in what was she? She was like a personal shopper kind of thing, and she was helping women to find things that flatter their body type. So she has her product line is based around dressing to flatter your body type. So she has.
Can you spell Lab? I want to put it in the chat.
It's LEV. Lev Apparel.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you can shop them
And we
online.
have another question for you from Amy Clemens. She wants to know, is it sort of better or okay to do polyester if it's secondhand? I think the idea is
Yes,
it's already
keeping
alive,
it.
you know.
Yep,
What do you think about
absolutely.
that?
I totally agree. Because it's keeping it out of a landfill. So great. For
Okay.
sure.
And then Jessica Hang asks, is Done Good available for Android phones? Oh, she can't find it on her Play Store. So maybe since Nikki's saying she's not tech savvy, well, you might know that answer, but
I think their website is equally as good as the app. There's nothing,
okay.
no function that you can't use on their website that's, you know, exclusive to the app. So it's just as good to just go on their website.
There you go. And Carmen has just posted it. So it's we've got, you know, it's almost 5 o'clock, and I want to give Nikki a chance to maybe share some summative statements. We have the question, is Lev Apparel also fair trade?
Yes.
So maybe you could answer that. And then for a final question, Amy, again, you know, what brought you to this? What's your why? You said that you told us where you were, but you didn't totally say why, and we'd love to know more as a great way to wrap up this conversation.
Yeah. Well, my heart is in the social work field, and I had personally found that I was getting very discouraged about the options available to make real change within the confines of the current system, because everything's so dependent on, there's so many great agencies, but funding is always at the mercy of whoever's in charge in politics. And so I thought, what can I do with my time that's accomplishing, you know, the same benefits as a social work kind of job? And then as I thought on it, and all the stars kind of aligned, this idea was formed of a store. And then it gave me the ability to actually be not just supporting the women who are making the products I sell, but then also I've done so many things to give back to the community. Like I don't do any paid advertising. I donate gift certificates to silent auctions. So I've given probably $10,000 to a variety of local organizations supporting women and children's needs locally. So to me, it just created, by making the store, I had this vehicle for having these kinds of conversations, for one thing. So I just felt like rather than keeping myself small by saying I'm going to be employed by an agency that does good, I'm like, I'm going to become an agency that does good. Mm-hmm. So it feels like that's happened. I mean, I'm really, really proud of how much the store, how much it's resonated with Madison. Like, we've been so held by this community, because it's not just me, it's like everyone that shops at the store, Amy included, who's, I can see Amy, I don't know if you can see Amy. Yeah, that the people I've met and the amount I've learned from customers, you know, because I'm not an expert by any means. I'm just like another person that would watch a movie like this and be like, I can't unsee that. What do I do? And this was something I could do. So I did.
Well, thank you. This has been a really, really inspiring session. You've given us a big dose of truth about how people are living, and you've given us some steps we can take to be part of change, and a great example of just working for the social good and figuring out how to put all the parts of yourself together to do just an amazing work with what you're doing. So thank you for the great lecture, the inspiring work. I think a lot of people will probably be taking a trip to the store and taking some of your advice. I'd like to encourage everybody on the call. We're going to be wrapping up in a minute, but please come back to the next book club film discussion. Watch your email for announcements, and this event will be recorded and shared on through email, and so you can share that with others as well. And yeah, I guess maybe just tell all your friends and family to Done Good as well. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.